Traditional sales training is keeping you broke. And today we're diving into two extremes, either high pressure buy at all costs, because if you don't buy this, you'll die, or where you give everything away for free, you build it, you add a ton of value, and you're left wondering why when I put a buy button on my website, all my engagement drop and no one buys. We're diving into all of that today, why that's happening, and what to do instead. Let's dive in. What's up, coach? Welcome back to another episode of the PT Profit Podcast. I'm your host, Beverly Simpson. As a former district fitness manager for a national gym responsible for bringing in $2.1 million in my region alone, plus building two multiple six-figure businesses online, I've been in sales since 2013. I have a ton of experience helping hundreds of smart and struggling coaches start and scale their profitable business, whether it's online, in person, or a combination of both. And today we're diving into two common traps most smart and struggling coaches get into without even realizing, and what to do instead. And it's all focused around the relationship and topic of selling. Because the truth is, there's a reason you don't want to be classified or identified or perceived as sleazy. Because there has been an experience where you have felt like that's sleazy, or you've been annoyed, or people have told you this is sleazy. Sleaze is real, because what I tend to see happen when people are applying pressure is one of 4 to 5 things, which is they lie. People will lie to you. They'll either be lying in the products or they're lying in promises and guarantees. Like, the people lie. Okay, that's number one. Then number two, people will not listen. So they're not listening to you. They're just, they're so used to the redundancy of a sales conversation that they are already anticipating what it is that they think that you're going to say, and then they lack everything. Now, this is really important. We're going to come back to this, because what often happens when I see people who are in a sales conversation and they're struggling is that they end up leaving their prospect feeling worse about themselves than they did when they got on the call. Okay. Then what also happens is people sell at inopportune times. They slide into your DMs and then they force you, and then they talk to you about buy this thing. And then lastly, they just won't take no for an answer. Now, what's interesting to me is that we've all experienced this. In fact, recently, someone slid into my DM. I've had 2 experiences that have been just so mind-boggling. One was she DM'd me, okay, and then I got an email. This almost like the exact same process, different people through the email. And she DM'd me, and listen, my DMs flood. And so I lose track of DMs all the time. So, but regardless, when people DM me and they're sleazy, spam me, I don't respond. So I was not listening to her. I didn't respond to her. I didn't respond. I ignored her. Same thing in the email. And then I think it was like the 3rd or 4th DM back, she starts attacking me for not responding to her, but attacking me as a person. Like, I can't believe how horrible of a person you would be to just not even have the decency to respond back. Like, attacks me. And I laughed. Listen, I've been in sales since 2013. I laughed, but I know that she was taught that process. I know that she was told and taught how to do that. And she continues to do it because people respond to that. And that to me is absolutely absurd. And then the same thing happened with my email. And so what kills me about that experience, one, is that is a method that's being taught. People just don't come out of the womb knowing how to do that. 1. 2, she continues to do it because obviously it works to some degree. And then 3, people who want to have sales conversations don't get served, because either they don't want that to happen again, so they don't reach out, and then they go do really absurd things they're taught on the internet, or you as the service provider feel very awful about having a conversation with the stranger, even though the stranger wants to have the conversation. So this requires you to look at your relationship to selling. Now, people understand the 2 extremes of the spectrum of selling, where either it's super sleazy and that won't take no for an answer, high pressure sales, versus the I'm just going to give everything away for free. I'm going to put a buy button on my website, and I'm going to, hope that somebody comes because they see so much value of all the good that I'm giving out into the world. Okay. So there's 2 extremes of the spectrum, and people, while they might understand that concept, they're not living from a knowing of this concept, and they are blind to the spectrum of the relationship. Meaning, what happens is you might not be super sleazy, but you might be so avoidant of that sleaze that you don't even want to have a sales conversation. So then you swing to the like, well, I know I can't give everything away for free because I'm a coach, but you swing to this side of feeling like I'm not providing enough value because everyone told me I need to build know, like, and trust, when in reality, that's keeping you broke. And if you don't believe me, then why is it that the majority of really smart coaches continue to struggle? And success feels reserved for the few. And the truth is that they understand this concept of what we're talking about, which is how to sell, how to have a selling conversation, how to position your product, service, method as the best way, not the second best. Nobody's Googling what's the second best way, but as the best way to solve your client's problem to help them get the outcome they want. That's what we're doing in a selling conversation. People say, sell them the solution, or people say attract people with the problem and sell them the solution. Well, really, we need to sell the transformation and position the solution as the best way. That's what we're doing. We got to get them on board with your solution. And in order to do that, we have to remove any and all doubt. No doubt, no fear. Now, in order to do that, we have to provide an airtight argument, which addresses doubt, fear, because fear is our friend. Fear is brain-based. It's never going away. You cannot be courageous without fear. You need to have, so we need to address it. We need to address doubt, and we need to address fear, and we need to move them towards desire. So you have to provide an airtight argument for why you're an authority. Why should they believe you? Why should they believe your offer? What should they believe in themselves? Do they believe in themselves? And do they need it now? You need to address those concerns. It's an airtight argument. That's when you'll take someone who's never heard of you before and become a customer. And it has nothing to do with putting people in fear. It has nothing to do with forcing people to buy or applying pressure at all. Now, I have seen hundreds of sales conversations. So what happens when you go to the other side of the spectrum where you just value? What happens is you run the risk of doing one of three things. Number one is that they just provide so much value. You bookmark the post. They say, thank you. This was so amazing. I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to come back to you. Okay. You run the risk of them doing that. Like, oh, I'm just going to save this. And then that's it. And the second thing that you do is you run the risk of them doing that, and then they go try and implement it, and then it doesn't work. So they think, so then they lose believability in your process. So they go, no, this isn't for me. Number three, you run the risk of overwhelming them so much that they think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. So, there's too much to do and I'm never going to be able to do this. That's why people don't buy when we over deliver. And plot twist, when we over deliver from an infused energy of desperation, I need this, I need you to love this, just love this, pick me. People feel that and they're like, oh, I don't know, it's like being that desperate person at the bar that's like, here, date me, will you marry me, will you marry me? People feel that. Even though they can't put their finger on it, they're like, I don't know, they're just, no. Or there becomes this abundance of pressure for you to do the work, heavy lifting for them. And then you get completely depleted. And it usually is coming from this place of like, oh, well, if I just prove my worth, prove my value, that's not going to help you or serve you. Because think about it. When was the last time someone said Google was my favorite website or the encyclopedia was my favorite website? Okay. And then what happens when I say this, people start to get a little like, oh my gosh, well, what becomes free and what becomes doesn't, right? We just have to get super crystal clear and remind you that people are not buying information. They are buying clarity in a specific step-by-step process and protocol for the implementation. That's what they're investing in, because information is so abundant, people get confused. Since everything works or everything will have, most people can back up their claims and make a case for their claim. That's why we have to have honest conversation around selling. Because here's the truth. No one's going to buy from the internet's best kept secret. So we have to put our work out there. That's number one. The number two, growth really comes down to visibility. So you can't buy from internet's best kept secret. The value, meaning the ladder of the believability. You have to carry people through. Why should I listen to you? Believe in you. They need to believe in your offer and process. In order to do this, you need to remove doubt of your work, and move them towards desire. Position your way as the best way. then you need to move them. You need to remove any and all resistance to belief in themselves. Like they're evaluating, can I do this? They need to believe in themselves. And this is a conversation of fear. Your brain literally is going to keep you safe and consistent. And so we're not trying to remove fear, but we need to address fear. And then we need to address urgency and believe in them and believe that they need it now. So we need to turn the want in the need and that they need it now. So the question then becomes how. And I also want to give this context because when people come into my world, they come into my world usually in two spaces, right? So they're either just starting out and they are starting in the online space because they've been like just incredibly successful in person. Or sometimes they're like really tapped out in their one-to-one and they want to scale and they want to go to the masses. Okay. And so what I want to offer to you is that these are the principles. I'm going through the principles of effective communication. And these three phases is how you create that airtight argument of carrying them through that ladder of believability and removing doubt and moving them towards the desired outcome that they already want. We're not creating demand. The demand is already there. And so these are principles that conversations need to happen either one-to-one, whether you're in a sales conversation, or one-to-many. People mess that up. They think, oh, I just hate sales, so let me just do a webinar. No. You're still having the sales conversation, just one-to-many. What this means is that you have to address all those resistance to move people through that ladder of believability without people talking to you. So those principles don't go away because you still have to address all the pieces of resistance that come up. So how do we do this? We're going to move this through three phases. I call this the core premise, the core content, and then the close. Okay. So it's a 3C framework. So when we're starting in the core premise, what we want to do is this is where we are setting the frame, and this is where we're going into the discovery. This is the discovery of what's the problem that they think they're in, what's the real problem that they either don't know that they're in or they're doing all the wrong things to fix it, and then what is the struggle, meaning what's in the way of getting them to what they want. We need to know that. Okay, what's in the way of getting them what do they want? Meaning, what are all the right things that they are? What are all the things that they're currently doing to try and get what they want? These questions in this section is what I call the subconscious self-sell. Because sometimes people are on autopilot all the time that they're not even present to doing to doing the actual work. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, when they're like, I already know what to do. And then you ask them, like, okay, so what are you doing to try and fix this problem that you're in? And they're like, well, and then you realize they are speaking out loud and getting present to the fact that maybe they aren't doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. Okay. So this phase of this phase of the discovery is really important. And in order for them to open up, you need to set the frame. So setting the frame is just being transparent and honest and taking leadership of the call, meaning, or leadership of the conversation, whether it's a call or one-to-many, where it's like, hey, this is what we're going to go through today. This puts people at ease because you answer the question in their mind of like, what are we doing? Oh, I hate when, people slide into DMs and they're like, how was your trip to Spain? And it's like, no. Okay, we're going to build rapport, but rapport is not coming from this place of let me be my best friend. Because think about it. How many people, who loves me the most? My mom, my husband, my children, and none of them are customers. So it's not love me enough to pick me. It's let me lead this conversation by telling you what's going to happen. I'm going to get clear on your problem so I can give you some context on the best way to solve it. Now, people get this messed up because they want to teach here. They want to teach. Let me show you. Love me. Pick me. If you guys know the reference, that's the Grey's Anatomy when Meredith goes and talks to Derek. That's an iconic scene, and it reminds me of sales because that's what people are usually stepping into the energy of, especially if they're new and they haven't done this before. What they just want to teach. Let me teach. But Google and Encyclopedia is not people's favorite books, and it's not their favorite website. Then what we do when we have that information is we transition into the core content. So the core content is where you get to provide your insight. Now, the framework that I like to do in my insight. Now, people say, oh, this is 2 to 3 minutes. I actually think it's more than 2 to 3 minutes. This is like the pre-pitch. This is the core content of the pre-pitch. And this is essential, I think. Now, if you want let's say you are running a team and you have a sales rep and they're like, watch some 5-minute video and then they're going to come into a call with the sales rep and then you want them to spend a 5K to 10K program. Like, the fact that people expect that someone's going to spend that kind of money after 3 minutes of insight is usually, in my opinion, as someone who's been in sales forever, I feel like that's a little bit unrealistic. Sure, there's going to be tons of exceptions that feel there's going to be people that I think that are the exception that prove the rule. Because to me, it doesn't matter how long it takes, but this is what it takes. Meaning, you have to carry them through that ladder of believability, essentially. Okay. And then in order for them to say yes to that, they have to see that the offer is 10 times worth the asking investment. So you just saying like, oh yeah, we have clients that do this and it's 3 minutes. So want me to walk you through how we do it? Like that, to me, the insight section has to be what I call the pre-pitch. This is where you're getting them on board with your solution. So what I like to do is, I have my method or you have your ways of doing it. This is your process. Okay. And then you're going to go in with like most people take this mistake. So they make this, they take this action. This is an issue. Why do you know that that's an issue? Why did they think that? So here's the action that they take. It's a misconception because that's why we do. And then you insert your new way of doing it. Then you back it up with a case study. And then I like to create a gap, which is like, now the gap means like, if not enough to just know this. Like, hey, this is what my client did when we did this. And then you create a gap. Now the gap can be for the next pillar. The gap can be for like, and so when people come into my program, that's why we put this component together. It's not enough to just know these 3 things, that we need this as well. What questions do you have for me? Okay. And then you tie it down with the what questions. Try and get in front of what they're going to say. So it's like you're having a conversation. It's not just like teach. It's a conversation. And when they're like, well, how do I do that? Yeah, totally. I'm going to walk you through how to do that. Right? You just tell them like, oh, I'll be happy to share that with you. But before we get there, we also have this. And then you go through that same framework until you get to the part. So now you've done your insight, you've done your pre-pitch. And then they're going to be like, well, how do I do that? Okay, cool. And if they don't ask, how do they do that? You say, okay, where do you want to go from here? I can walk you through how specifically I can take you from problem to desired outcome. But you tell me, where do you want to go from here? And then they're like, yes, tell me. And you will then go into the offer presentation, the pitch. Cool. Name of program, promise, guarantee, or not even guarantee. It could just the risk reversal. It's just addressing the risk. Why? Because everyone's had a horrible experience on a call. Okay. So then after you go through the pitch, the last question becomes, well, how much does it cost? And then you go through the investment, and then we need to address resistance. Okay. Resistance is going to come up. Why? Because people make a decision on price. And so when they hear the price, their brain is going to go crazy. It doesn't matter what the price is. Because your brain, your habit brain, your fear brain is literally going to try and keep you safe, even though this might be the best thing for you. It doesn't matter. Your brain just goes, pop, pop. And depending on how loud people's mental chatter is, it's pop, pop, really loud. And so then you need to address it. Doesn't mean we need to convince, we need to put pressure, we need to make people feel bad of like, oh, well, if you don't buy, you're going to die. Which literally I've heard people say that. We're not trying to make a client feel worse about themselves. What we are doing is we are removing doubt. We are supporting fear, addressing it, helping them access their courage, which is acting in the presence of fear. That's what we're doing. Then we need to address resistance. But the biggest mistake I see people make when it comes to addressing resistance, especially if they have any sales training at all, is that they actually just address what is said instead of getting to the root of the resistance. Because what people say isn't always what they mean. And so when someone gives you a price objection or a money objection, people start going into the like, well, we can do blah, 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 and they start addressing money. When the reality is that this could actually be a value conversation, which is, I don't think that the value of what it is that you're offering is worth the asking investment. Oh, I need to talk to my partner. I need to think about it. Well, what is it that you need to think about? It automatically puts people on the defense where they have to feel like they have to explain themselves. That's not what we are doing. We need to neutralize, calm down the nervous system, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and then address the resistance and get to the root of the resistance before we start addressing it. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter what vehicle it is that you're having this conversation, either whether it's a sales call or you're on a webinar or you're doing a podcast, whatever the case may be. And this could be happening in your content. It could be happening in your podcasts, or this could be happening in your content, whether it's paid, free, whether it's in top of funnel or in the middle of the funnel. This is literally effective communication everywhere. Now, if you want me to show you how and you want to go deeper, send me an Instagram DM, comment sales so that I know that it's coming from this podcast. And we could just talk about how we can communicate effectively and master the art of selling without selling. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll catch you on the next episode.